Hello and welcome to this week's show of Weighted Donuts. I'm Wayne Unger, and I'm flying solo this week. And today's guest is a returning guest. I actually lost count of how many times he's been here, which is pretty good. I guess that almost makes him a friend, or maybe it does make him a friend. Welcome, Dan Szymborski. Hey, Dan, how are you?
Hey, Wayne, I'm pretty good. I'm everybody's friend as long as they don't send me very nasty emails that make me sad, which happens.
Okay. Well, but you're okay with nasty tweets?
Yeah, well, they have to be good ones. If you're gonna be mean, you have to be creative about it.
All right.
Like someone says, "Oh, you're fat." Like, okay, that's not very creative. If you can think of something better, that would be cool. But don't bore me.
I'm with you. So, okay. Something caught my eye this morning. There are we have a lot of, there's a lot of bloggers out there. Okay. And so today somebody posted something in a Facebook group called Baseball Analytics. And it's titled MLB Metrics 101, the 10 most overrated stars of baseball. And I'm a little confused about how this guy came to this conclusion. But basically, he says, it seems as though, all right. And this is what he writes. This involves focusing on what's in the final column on a player's baseball reference.com page. All-star games, silver sluggers, and gold gloves, as well as MVP, Cy Young, and Rookie of the Year awards. These things aren't determined by statistical accomplishments. Each comes with a gray area that can be influenced by a player's reputation. That makes them good fodder for the following reputation points, and he gives them points for, on a varying scale on all of the above. He only has 2015, 2016 stats considered, and he disregarded all relief pitches, and he also include calculate a player's average WAR per season, and calculate a player's average WAR his 3 best seasons, add the 2 figures together, find the average. Basically the whole thing is so he was trying to find a ratio between a player's normal / prime WAR and his reputation points, which I don't see where unless he's just trying to go after stars with names that, some people can prove, don't have value. So I'm going to go through his list. And you can tell me agree, disagree, or disagree but understand where he might have come to this point. So his first list, though, is guys that didn't make his list, but he gives them honorable mentions. Madison Bumgarner.
Or dishonorable mention. Kind of a
yes,
dishonorable
exactly.
mention.
That's what he said. Dishonorable mentions. You saw the piece?
No, I haven't seen the piece, but you said honorable mentions, and if you're just
yes,
a list
and actually I see him in parentheses. He wrote this. In parentheses, he wrote this. So yes, it is dishonorable mention. So first one was Madison Bumgarner.
Well, the thing about Bumgarner is he's a really good pitcher, and he has been durable until self-inflicted injuries. But there's also sometimes this perception that he's like a Cy Young guy. And I don't think he's ever had that one Cy Young season. He's a star pitcher, but I think some people think that he's a little better than that he's the equivalent of Kershaw, which he isn't. So I can see how he can kind of almost make a list like this.
Okay. Yadier Molina.
No, I think he's about rated now. There was a period where I think he was overrated. I remember when I said if I had an MVP ballot that one season, what season was it that he had? Well, I said he was only like the 8th best player in the league. I think it was 2012. And of course people are angry at me saying he's easily the MVP. And I'm like, well, so I think he's 6th instead of 4th. That's not that much of a bashing. But I don't know if he's really overrated now. I think some of that hysteria has backed off a little as his offense has dropped off.
Yeah. Okay. Dallas Keuchel, who I don't understand is on this list because I don't think he's only really had one really big season. I just don't see him as being perceived anywhere as like a star. I think that with most people, the jury is out on him.
Well, 2014 was a really good year for him too, and he's obviously having a really awesome start this year. I'm not sure that people really overrate him that much. I don't think being an Astro necessarily gives you that kind of juice. I don't think there's not like a lot of you don't hear his name as often as I wouldn't personally put him on an overrated list. I don't think. I think he's rated now.
Will Myers.
Well, up until 2016, I would have agreed with you. He was, up and down, had a lot of injury problems, but he was really good in 2016 in the park he was in. I think it's a particularly poor park for him, Petco, and he's having a crazy start this year. I guess you could call him slightly overrated, but he's still a really good player.
I don't even think he's been overrated. Again, he had that great rookie season, and then he battled injuries and whatever. He only just started coming back last year, so I personally don't even see where he was on the list. Okay, so now we're going to go to this guy's list. Okay, Carlos Gonzalez.
Oh, absolutely, Cargo. There's sometimes this perception that he's a borderline star, which I actually don't think really works for him. He's had a couple star seasons, especially through 2013, but he's been just a decent average to above average player the last few years. He made the All-Star game last year. He really wasn't really all that good last year. He was average, but I think when you're talking an All-Star, you want a little bit higher standards. I would agree he's overrated.
Okay, no, I agree as well. Bartolo Colon.
Oh, I can't say anything bad about Bartolo. Who doesn't love Bartolo Colon?
Neither can I.
I guess you could say he was a little overrated last year, but I can't in my heart say something bad about him. The dude's like my exact body type, so it's like, gotta show some solidarity. So I'll
but
saying he's overrated, even though we kind of know he is. But
yeah, okay, and the other thing is he probably has the largest cranium in baseball.
Yeah, and I share that with him too. I have a giant head. I kind of look like a caricature that they draw when you're at the beach.
Okay, next, Justin Upton.
Oh yeah, he's definitely overrated. Maybe not quite as much after last season, especially like the first half. But there's always kind of been this perception in some circles that he's a star. And he really hasn't had that many star seasons. He's had a few, but really he's the same. He never really advanced as a player beyond where he was at age 21. It always feels like he should have ended up a superstar instead of just a really good player. But yeah, I would call him overrated. Although he's having a good season so far.
Oh, but you know what it is? Maybe it's just because, I'm a little, I'm so engrossed in baseball. I don't even like to me. I see the name and like the star, whatever star he had. To me, it's faded. So I don't, I guess other people, still have that earlier perception of him, like a lot of others on this list. Okay, number 7, Nelson Cruz.
He's kind of tricky in that he was a risky signing for the Mariners and he's worked out well, but it's funny. I probably would have called him overrated even while he was having good years in Texas. I'm not sure I'd really call him overrated now. I mean, he's been legitimately good from 2014 to 2017, really. He's probably underrated as a defensive player. He's not Mark Trumbo bad. He's not going to win a Gold Glove or anything, but he's adequate enough to play in the field at times. I don't think I'd call him overrated. Because if he were overrated after hitting 43 home runs, having a 9-something OPS last year, he would have finished higher than, I think he was like 14th or 5th. He was pretty far down the MVP voting last year. So I don't think I'd call him overrated right now.
Okay. No, I agree. Adam Jones.
Yeah, he's overrated. I hate to say that as an Orioles fan from Baltimore. But he's never really been that good a defensive player. He has a good start this year, but you've seen the decline in his bat year to year. Last season was not good. He was certainly a below average player last year, and he's on the wrong side of 30. So, yeah, I'd call him overrated.
Salvador Perez.
No, I think he's related. I think he's rated about where he should be. He's a player with some flaws in his game. He's never going to have a good on-base percentage. He's never going to show any kind of real plate discipline. But he's also an acceptable defensive catcher who does have some offense, does have some power. I guess I think this is kind of limitations because it's hard to objectively determine how a player is perceived. And he has all-star appearances, so it would look like he's overrated. But the AL catcher group hasn't been all that great, so it's less surprising than usual that he's gotten like 4 all-star games in a row. So I'd probably put him about right. I think this just is more the limitations of the methodology than anything.
Let me ask you something. You said you say he's an acceptable defensive catcher. His reputation is much higher than that.
Yeah, he does have a strong arm. That kind of part of catching can be a little overrated, simply because, well, it's nice. There's a lot more than just throwing out runners, and he's not quite as good at the other things. And if he's still going to throw out, he was nearly 50% of base stealers he caught last year, but he's not really usually up at that level. If he actually stayed up at 50% or around there, then that would be different. But he's probably like a 35% guy, and that's nice. But you're not going to get a ton of runs simply because stealing bases isn't a big part of baseball offense these days. So there's a limit on the value he can have there. But he's a good player. He's just not an amazing one, and it's kind of a weak catching class in the AL.
The one thing that I think hurts him as well is I think Kansas City plays him too much.
Oh yeah, they get a lot out of him. A lot of teams will sometimes rest their catcher if they play him a lot, give him a lot more starts at DH and first base. He's only played a little at those positions. They push him into the ground almost.
Yes. Ian Desmond.
Yeah, he's probably overrated, especially if he's not playing shortstop. Because if he's in a corner outfield position or at first base, then his offense really isn't enough to warrant all-star appearances. So yeah, I'd call him overrated. a good player. Tends to be misused. But yeah, put him in the overrated pile.
Okay. I mean, I don't, you know what it is? Again, he's another player who I don't see as even, having, is even high enough to be considered overrated. So there's a few on the list. Next one,
You might hang
Jay
around with.
Bruce.
You might hang around. Oh yeah, Bruce is overrated. He's having a good start this year, but he's not really that good. He's pretty much a butcher defensively. He hasn't really been consistently a good hitter for a corner outfielder until you look back to like 2012, 2013. Yeah, put him in overrated easily.
Here's one a little close, very close to home for you. Matt Wieters.
Does anyone overrate Matt Wieters these days? I mean, in a sense, he underperformed in the majors. He turned out to be a decent catcher that could hit decently, but more was expected of him when he was drafted. So in that sense, he's a bit of a disappointment. But I don't think anyone's really pumped up Wieters for really years now. I mean, when was the last time you heard someone talk about him as one of the best catchers in baseball?
Again, it's been a while. Yes. No, another guy who, again, like, why is he on the list? Okay. Here, Eric Hosmer. He's number one on the list.
Yeah, Hosmer's pretty overrated. I'm still fuming about Hosmer getting all those at-bats over Paul Goldschmidt in the WBC because it was it's pretty obvious that Goldschmidt is the better player. Hosmer essentially has two really good seasons in the majors, 2013 and 2015, unless I've shifted everything a year off. It's possible because I'm not looking at his line right now. Two really good years in the majors, and that's all he really has. He wasn't actually good last year. He wasn't actually good in 2014. And people talk about him like he's an MVP candidate. He's not. He's not a good player. If he gets $50 million in free agency, that is going to be an overpay. He's essentially.
No, I tend to agree, and you're right about those. Yeah, you're right about those two seasons as well. Those were his two seasons. Eric Hosmer is. It's funny. I traded for him in Diamond Mine, so I had him off his 2013 season. I dropped him, and I redrafted him off his 2015 season, and then of course, I dropped him again. So, okay, well, we got that out of the way. Let's talk about the start to the Major League season and the big thing. Okay, I guess. Well, player that everyone's talking about is Eric Thames. How did you rate or perceive him before the season started?
Well, not at this level, certainly. The Zips projections were, of course, optimistic on him. They already had him they projected him coming into the season with 26 home runs and a 247 batting average. He's obviously been well above that. He's hitting like 360, I think. He has 11 home runs already. So even though Zips was optimistic on his bat, he's been even better than that. He's probably going to beat the 26 home run projection, considering he already has 11. Now, obviously, he's not going to end up hitting 70 home runs, but he's been even better than I think people expected. I think it's a big boost for the KBO, the Korean Baseball Organization, simply because it gives more attention to them and saying, these guys, the best players in Korea, just like the best players in Japan and Cuba, deserve to be in the major leagues. Even if they're ex-major leaguers that were fringe, people can improve, and I think Thames has improved.
Right. Yeah. Well, it's the theory is that by going to Asia, where they throw more breaking balls, it helped him become a more selective hitter.
Yeah, I mean, people improve. We've seen that
Yeah.
with other players.
Yeah, well, yeah, but actually the only one who's really come back from Japan like that I can think of is Cecil Fielder.
Well, not for the hitters, but remember Colby Lewis was much better when he came back too.
Yes, right. Oh, and didn't oh man, there was another pitcher I think went to Japan too and came back.
Trying to remember.
Was it?
I don't have it
Bolsavong? Yeah, I know. But okay, so I'm gonna. Freddie Freeman, is he for real? Is he gonna be the premier hitting first baseman?
I'm not sure I go that far. He's having a terrific start. I mean, there's no question about that. And I think that that Suncrest Park, is actually a good place for a left-handed power hitter. I'm not sure I'd put him as the best yet, but he's a really good player. He's right in his prime. So really, he's about the right year to have a crazy career season. I mean, the last 4 months of 2016 were pretty crazy too. Maybe I'm being a little too negative. Maybe I should just say, yeah, he's elite. I'll say that. I always hate to commit to saying that player is the best unless they're like Mike Trout.
Okay. Daniel Murphy, did you expect him to pick up where he left off?
I expected some regression simply because history says that players like that will regress somewhat, but he isn't so far, which is kind of weird. If you asked me 3 years ago, is Daniel Murphy going to be a perennial MVP candidate? I'd be like, what are you smoking? But he's pretty much done last year what he's doing this year, again. So far, so good that I'm wrong on him.
Well, I think, Daniel Murphy would say the same thing himself, because if Daniel Murphy thought he was going to be a perennial MVP candidate, he would have taken the Mets qualifying offer. And that's what I tell all the Met fans, here in New York when they complain about the Mets letting Murphy go. And I say, listen, even Daniel Murphy didn't expect this. So.
Yeah, he would have taken 1 year 17 instead of 338 if he had thought he was going to be an MVP-ish.
Okay. All right, so I'm going to ask you about some players who right now are seemingly overachieving. Do you expect them to level a little bit? You can tell me whether you expect them to level off a little bit, but still, finish the season impressively, or if you expect them to crash. And I guess I'll just go down the list here. I'll start with batters first. Zach Cozart.
He'll crash a bit, but he's actually a pretty good player. I think the Reds are kind of crazy if they don't trade him soon. I know they've been a little better than expected, but he's not going to be around the next time the Reds have a really good team. If you're going to ask me if he's going to have if he's going to hit near 400, obviously he's going to come down from that. He is a free agent after this season. He'll come back to earth somewhat, but he's a good player.
Ryan Zimmerman.
Zimmerman is, I don't even know where this came from, because Zimmerman has been absolutely just atrocious since the injuries. I mean, you look at, last year he was probably one of the team's biggest problems. And at this point, they're just like waiting out the clock on his contract. But he's already at 8 home runs. That's absolutely absurd. So I'll be optimistic and maybe think that we're back to kind of prime Zimmerman, but I'm not buying that he's a star again.
Okay. Avisal Garcia.
Oh no, Avi Garcia is going to crash majorly, I expect, because you look at his numbers, and it's pretty much pumped by his batting average on balls in play, which is at an unrealistic level. It's like 470 or something, and that's like 100 points better than the best player in history for a career. Ty Cobb. So it's like someone hitting 466 batting average, 100 points ahead of the best ever. And when he's back down to, like, even if he goes back down to, say, a 350 batting average in balls in play, all of a sudden he's a 320 on base guy with like a 4-something slug. And he's also an atrocious fielder. He's coming back to earth. I would be shocked if he maintained quality play the rest of the season.
Mitch Haniger.
Haniger's a tricky one, because you look at Haniger, he was kind of one of those, those journeymen who we used to call Ken Phelps All-Stars, who never really got a chance in the majors. I thought he'd be decent. I didn't think he'd be this good. He'll come back to earth somewhat, but it also can be some legitimate improvement. I'd give his odds at a real improvement at significantly higher than I would for Avi Garcia.
Okay. Let's go to pitching a little bit. Irvin Santana.
He might actually have taken a step up, because you look at his stuff has been pretty nasty this season. He's been getting, I don't have it in front of me, but he's been getting really good movement numbers on his pitches. I'll say some of it, I think he'll crash less hard than most of the other guys you said.
Okay. James Paxton.
Paxton, he's always had potential. He's never just put it together and been healthy at the same time. I don't think he's an ace, but if you look at his peripheral numbers, he hasn't allowed a home run yet. He's striking out a ton of guys. He's not walking anybody. I'll say in this case that obviously he's not going to finish with an ERA under 1.5 or anything, but I think his emergence this year is real. You actually see a lot of it last year, where his ERA was like a run above where his peripherals said. He had a FIP under 3 in 2016. So he was always a candidate for some improvement. So I'm going to say that a lot of this is for real.
Jeremy Hellickson.
Hellickson, I'm not really going to buy. He's pretty much the same pitcher, like, stuff-wise as he's always been. He struck out he's like at 3 strikeouts per 9 innings, which is very hard to maintain for any pitcher. So I'm going to say he's going to come back to earth.
No, I'm with you on that. I just had to throw him out there, it's like I look at this list, and as you know, I do the diamond mine thing, and I'm looking at this list, and there are some guys on this list that were drafted very early in our last free agent draft who, actually when they were drafted, I was like, yes, only because that person took somebody who I wanted no part of, and it left another guy for me. So, Kendall Graveman.
I was always trying to make Romeo and Juliet jokes about him, because when Mercutio says, if you ask for me, you'll find me a grave man. But there's always been a segment that liked him, but I'm not really buying it yet. His peripherals aren't really that great. I'll say not real.
Okay. And Danny Duffy.
Oh, Duffy's pretty awesome. Duffy, if he had more innings last year, he could have been a Cy Young candidate. I think he is a really good pitcher, and he is a legitimate ace, if not like a Clayton Kershaw type, of course, or a Chris Sale. But no, I'll say that he's generally for real.
Okay, I'm going to go one more. Someone who you and I both, were disappointed in last year, Luis Severino.
Oh, well, Severino, I've always been optimistic on, and I've been calling for people to not move him out of the rotation so quickly, that the home runs were concerning, but you don't move a guy like that out of the rotation until you're absolutely sure he can't succeed in the rotation. So no, I think that he's a very talented pitcher, and I think he's pitching really well. I think he's going to be a really good starter. So I don't think he's as good as his ERA right now says, but I think he is a legitimate, not a starter, but I think he's a legitimate number 2 right now. So I'm not that negative on him, even though I'm calling for some coming back to earth. He'll have some problems. He'll have some rough patches where he allows too many home runs, I'm sure. But no, I'm optimistic on him. I think people panicked too much about last year.
Yeah, you and I both. Actually, what you said last year, I think it might have actually have been the first time we had you on. So it was a little over a year ago. It was before the season. You actually said that you felt Severino was probably the Yankees' most reliable pitcher.
It didn't really work out in 2016.
I'm not knocking you on your prediction. I actually agreed with you. You know.
Yeah, I'm just thinking of people like, his ERA was near 6. There were always those concerns about Tanaka's, partial tear still at that point. So I don't take that back. I think that was perfectly reasonable, and I'm glad to see that 2017 is better than 2016 for him so far.
Speaking of Tanaka, he has the option to opt out. If you were a major, let's say he does opt out. Let's say, he gets through the season relatively healthy with, let's say results equal to last season. Would you give him a 5-year guaranteed contract?
Personally, well, one, it would obviously depend on where my team was. I think personally I would consider it at least, but I'd probably want a little off the top or some kind of clause for injury. You see them sometimes where it says like someone gets an option for a year at $500,000 if X player spends time on the DL with an elbow problem. I would want some kind of bet hedging thing on that.
Call it the John Lackey clause.
Yeah, the John Lackey. I was thinking John Lackey, but there have been other pictures into that. But Lackey's was the most famous because it was actually exercise. And there was that whole thing of would he report or not, and he did report and took the deal. I think that you need some kind of assurance simply because he did rehab through an injury that a lot of the players would have gotten Tommy John surgery for. And nothing bad has happened so far. But that's not a guarantee. Nothing's ever going to happen. He still has the same elbow in there. I would want some kind of risk-reducing thing. But if I get that, then I would be willing to give him a 5-year contract. And I think someone will give him a 5-year contract.
Okay, let's go to Miguel Cabrera. He was starting to hit when he got injured, but are we starting to see the wrong side of 30 decline?
Oh, we've already seen some of that. He was still really good last year, but he's declined somewhat from that like 2010 to 2013 peak. He's already shown some signs of decline. And the fact is, he's not a young player. He turned 34 not that long ago, I don't think. It's inevitable because time always wins. Time wins everything. So I do think we're seeing some decline. I mean, the small sample size of 2017 isn't enough to say that's the decline, but it shouldn't be unexpected at this point because he's at the point of his career where he is going to show continual decline. Hopefully it's gradual. Sometimes it could be sudden. You look at Albert Pujols, who declined very early. Being a crazy good hitter is no guarantee. I do think we're seeing some decline though, and we should expect that.
Okay. Now, in the standings, what's a mirage, and or I should say, okay, teams that are doing well that weren't expected. What do you consider? I mean, it's kind of leveled out a little bit, but did you expect the Diamondbacks or the Rockies to be 1 and 2?
No, I absolutely did not. I did say the Rockies had a good chance at a wild card. I thought even if I'm not a fan of the front office, which I'm not, they do have enough talent in there that they can kind of brute force their way into a wild card, even if they made some decisions in recent years that kind of limited the value they got from players. I don't think that they're going to be near first place when the season ends. And as you say, we're starting to see some evening out. The Dodgers are around 500. They'll catch up. The Giants, I think they're still a good team, but they're also in a bit of a hole that you don't magically get out of, because I mean we're like a seventh of the way into the season already, so holes become a little tougher to climb out of. I do think at the end the Dodgers will probably be first again, the Padres probably last, and then Arizona's probably going to fall more than the Rockies will, especially with the news about Shelby Miller, because even if Miller wasn't good last year, he's also part of the team's upside this year that he actually recovers. I think Arizona will drop off, probably finish a little above 500 now. Same as the Rockies, and I think that the Dodgers will be up at the top, and then it really depends on how well the Giants can recover.
Are the Mets as bad as they appear?
No, the Mets aren't as bad as they appear. I mean, I poured some cold water on them earlier in the season saying that, because the thing is, people assume every year that all the pitchers, I mean, I love their young pitchers. I mean, don't get me wrong, but people always assume that they're all going to be healthy and they're all going to pitch well. People have this, they fall too in love with the paper roster at the start of the season. They don't care. Well, what if Wheeler is not as sharp? What if Harvey isn't as sharp? What if there was Syndergaard scratched from a start? Those are real concerns that you have to take into account. I think they're better than this, but I do think the Nationals were the better team coming into the season, not by a giant amount, but I think that they had fewer holes. The Mets do have some holes. Third base is a big problem. I'm glad they're using Conforto, simply because he didn't look like he had an obvious path to playing time coming into the season. But they'll be better than this, is what I'll say.
Okay. Are your Orioles as good as their record?
No, they're not really a 14-16. You look at the team, and they've done a lot of smoke and mirrors. They're not actually scoring runs. They'll get better performance from Gausman than they have, but they're going to get worse performance from Wade Miley. I think they have enough of a little bit of a cushion that they'll clearly be about 500 at the end of the season. Because think about it, say you think they're a 500 team, you would think they're 10-10 at this point instead of 14-6. That's 4 extra wins, and there's no mystical force that's going to give them one extra bad streak later this season. If you thought they were an 81 team coming into the season, then you would think they're an 85-win team now. And if you think they're an 85-win team now, that's a team that has a realistic shot at the division, simply because nobody's running away with it. The Red Sox are a good team, but they've had some issues. They've of course, David Price, and some of their offensive players just aren't doing that much. I think the Orioles, they're in a good situation, probably one of their upside scenarios, but they're not going to run away with the division, and they're not going to win 95 games.
And what about my Yankees?
The Yankees, well, they'll come back to earth, too. I don't think any team in the division, now that Price has been out, if Price comes back, then the Red Sox are probably the best team in the division. Without it, it's a real question. And the Yankees do have an edge on teams that are probably better than them, and that's important because I always compare it to me running a race with Usain Bolt. He's a lot faster than me, but there's a lead you can give me in which I can beat him in a 100-meter dash. He'll kick my ass if we start at the same time. But if you spot me like 500 meters, I can win that. And it's the same thing here. I thought coming into the season that the Blue Jays were better than the Yankees. But the Blue Jays are 8 games right now behind the Yankees. So even if the Blue Jays are better than the Yankees, they're not 8 games per 140 games better than the Yankees. So that lead, that cushion is pretty important. The Yankees now are a real playoff contender, even if you tend to be pessimistic on them, simply because they have a start, they have a cushion. So, like the Orioles, they'll come back to earth, but the start gives them a lot of ammunition. They have more options now.
Okay. One last thing. The Tampa Bay Rays. I didn't pick them as a wild card team, but I picked them as a sleeper team. What do you think of the Rays?
I would say they're a sleeper team because they have a lot of interesting players that you're not quite sure how good they are. Like Chris Archer, Alex Cobb coming back from injury, Blake Snell. They have, Honeywell coming up eventually. It's a team that has upside. They just haven't really hit it yet. I thought they were about a 500 team coming into the season, and they've been playing about 500 ball, but they still have upside scenarios, but they also have downside scenarios. Because that's the thing about uncertainty. It cuts you both ways. But they're an interesting team, and they're better than they were in 2016. They were under 70 games in 2016, and I don't think the team was ever really that bad. I think they are a 500-ish team that could surprise either way.
Okay, Dan, I really appreciate you coming on. I always appreciate your time.
It's always fun. I like to talk.
That's good. That is good. And let's see. So we're at the end of May. So maybe we'll get you in another 5 or 6 weeks, and I hope you can make it to New York to the Sabre Conference. And
yeah, if I can, I will. Yeah.
Okay.
Are we...
And because if you make it, all right, you have a choice. I will either take you for the best Chinese food or the best chicken parm hero you ever had. All right? It'll be your choice.
You're trying to make me fatter than I am.
Okay, I tell you what. I'll take you for, let's see. How about the best skirt steak you ever had, and you can get nothing but veggies on the side? How's that?
Yeah, I love skirt steak. Oh, I love chicken parm too. I love Chinese
food. Okay.
I'm actually eating Chinese food right now. I've been eating a dumpling while we've been talking.
Well, listen, the place I go to, and I've been going there since around 1978. It's called Wohop. Anyone who's been to Chinatown, who knows Chinatown in New York, just about everybody knows Wohop. And they have absolutely, hands down, the very best dumplings you ever had. Fried or steamed, I guarantee you, they will be the very best dumplings you ever had.
Oh yeah, that's definitely a selling point. If I can, I will. It depends on work, what we're doing. Since I'm one of the people that's still employed.
Yeah, I know. It's I didn't even want to bring it up. I know it's a touchy issue, and it's kind of sad.
It was a bad day. Everybody had been on edge for a while, and seeing some friends and acquaintances and colleagues go, it was a tough day.
Yeah,
no way around that.
Listen, unfortunately, I see it at my own company. Thankfully, for the most part, I'm at the trade end, at the union end, so we don't really deal with that too much. So, but nonetheless, it's always sad to see somebody, have to find a new way to make a living, or not,
Yeah. Although guys like Jason Stark, they'll be fine. They'll get other jobs, I'm pretty sure.
That excuse me. I know there were a lot of really good people on that list, but I'll be quite honest with you. I found him to be the most puzzling name. The most.
Yeah, a lot of people were. But I guess it's everybody's turn sooner or later. Media is a brutal work job. Yes. Okay, well, anyway, I'll talk to you. You said, sorry.
Yes, I was going to say, no, you have a great day. Enjoy your dumpling, and we will talk again soon. And thanks for coming on.
Always fun, Wayne. I'll talk to you later. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye. And that's it for this week's show of Weighted Donuts. I hope you enjoyed it, and we'll be back again next week.